Welcome to episode 5 of Star Wars and Scotch. I am Kevin. That's Tim over there. And that's Byf down there.
What's up?
Byf is our first guest on the show ever. This is, again, I said this before when we messed up, but we're doing it over again. That we have been trying to talk to Byf about Star Wars for probably 2 years now. At least I have.
It was since Rogue One, right? Yes. We sat down in Rogue One, and we were like, dude, we should just sit down and talk about Star Wars and have some beers at some point.
Yes.
That was my first recollection of it, at least.
I know there were Old Republic conversations along the way, too. And we've since Tim and I started this, we're like, we got to bring Byf on. We got to get Byf on. So we're very excited to have you here. Thank you for staying up late in foggy old London town to join us. We're going to talk to Byf about a whole mess of things. There's a Slido link if you guys want to ask Byf questions, if you want to put questions for the whole group. If there's lore readings that you need read, don't worry. We'll make it happen. But tonight is going to be a fun night of just discussion about Byf's history of Star Wars, what he loves, what he's expecting, what his favorites are, what he hates, the whole 9 yards. So, cool. Let's rock. Byf, give us your journey to and through a galaxy far, far away. Where did you get introduced to it? When did you become a huge fan of it? And how is it correlated even to what you do now? Because space magic is space magic, and I think, you know, a common thread of Destiny has come from a love of Star Wars for all things Destiny.
Absolutely. Hell yeah, dude. So I think my love of Star Wars originates from my dad, actually, because he was an old Trekkie as well as a lover of Star Wars. And I think it was way back at some point we sat down in cinemas and watched The Phantom Menace, or he brought it home on a VCR back in the day, because of course the VCRs and not DVDs and not Blu-rays yet. You know, I think my fascination truly began at that moment in time, and it was just this sort of like this strange universe that I fell in love with, but it held all the kind of like young boy fantasy tropes of like, oh dude, these are knights with swords, except they're lasers, that's awesome. And that's, you know, that was my earliest introduction. But the place where I truly fell in love with Star Wars and the place where I truly began to appreciate it, unquestionably KOTOR. My dad got the game for me at some point, and it was a birthday present, and I played the ever-living shit out of KOTOR. I think I played something like 6 different playthroughs back in the day before I had picked up most other games, and it has stayed with me as one of my favorite pieces of writing within Star Wars, and it's one of my favorite games around the entire universe ever since. You know, aside from, I don't know, are we allowed to talk spoilers of KOTOR? I almost feel like it's too sacred.
If you are here and you have arrived here and you have not played KOTOR, you have probably found yourself in a place on the internet you don't want to be or you shouldn't be. So you're 100% allowed to talk about KOTOR. You know, Tim and I have said on the show that KOTOR might be one of the best twists in the history of games. Forget about Star Wars. Just games, period, end of sentence. So, go for it.
Because you sit there and in every loading screen and through a whole bunch of different lines of dialogue, you're hearing little hints towards who Darth Revan was and a little bit of the story, and you see him in his original garb, or her, depending on which character you choose, but in canon, Revan is male, I believe. And it's one of these things of like, when Malak finally sits there and runs home everything that you've just been like, am I really? When you see the cutscenes, and he says, you were not always this way, Revan. And it's just like,
yep.
Like, Death Star exploding in the background as my mind is being blown along with it.
I remember being like, say what? what did you just say? And then they had that camera pan like around you, and I'm like, no way! And then they're showing everything, and I'm like, oh my god, I've spent 40 hours playing this game.
Yeah, and it's like, I think my favorite thing is still the reactions of everybody who plays that for the first time and just figures it out.
Yep.
Because it is one of those brilliant twists that I feel like I'll never see again in gaming.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you'd always been told about this character and you thought it was incredibly relevant because you're fighting his apprentice. Maybe you find one of Revan's artifacts or something. Maybe that's what the Star Forge was. Of course, we knew better by the end of the story. But, you know, you sat there and you go to the freaking the Leviathan and you get pulled in by the tractor beam, and this moment happens. And it honestly changes the entirety of the pacing of the story. Like, whatever your fourth planet is, it makes it feel so much more different. And for me, my fourth planet the first time round was Korriban. So it was like, oh, okay. So am I going home? Am I going
to... please.
Tim, they canonized Korriban too.
I'm just kidding.
Both are acceptable answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, going back there and just finding that.
I'll give you. Let me give you one of our theories that we throw out a lot. And there was actually news this week from one of the pieces of literature that's come out from Rise of Skywalker. But how do you feel? I'll talk about it in a second. How do you feel about Exegol being the Starforge?
Oh,
not you, Tim. Byf.
So fun fact, I was actually chatting with Paul, aka Mondays, aka used to be Chad. Just earlier last week, and he brought up the exact same point to me about Exegol being, having the ability to produce a massive ton of ships, and also the fact that it's had this ancient dark side presence. The only way you can get to it is with a wayfinder. And it fits all of these different terms for that unknown, for the Starforge, but also for how we get to the unknown system where the Starforge is located in KOTOR originally. And it's, it's in the unknown regions and everything else. And it's just, there's a lot to go on there, but I'd be really interested to see how Exegol turned into what it is now. Because, if they are the same, or at very least if the remains of the Starforge is on Exegol, then... yeah, I'd love to see if it's one of those things of like the remnants of it or some of the technology crashed into the planet, which is all oceanic, and maybe there's something that changed the climate. And it's 4,000 years, so it's not necessarily enough for it to go through a complete cataclysm, but it's one of these moments where it's like something big would have had to happen to develop it from one location to another. So I don't know, like it's possible, but it's one of these moments of like, I really hope that they expand on Exegol no matter what they do, because it's clearly got like an ancient Sith presence to it. And it's just one of these things of like, if I've heard all of this shit about Korriban, and then Exegol is just turning up, unknown regions or not, I want to know more about this place, I want to know more about who built it, what the civilization there is like, Like, if
Kevin,
it turns
what
out
do you know?
So basically, stuff came out explaining the cultists and who they were, the ones on Exegol. And the story goes is that and I'm giving you the TLDR version. If you want, you can go to screenrant.com and look up the article. But the story goes is that the cultists came to Exegol a long time ago, and they basically have been there doing the bidding of the Sith Lord, who all we know about is Palpatine. We don't know if there were before. We don't really know where they came from, but they do the bidding of the Sith Lord no matter what. They're the ones that built all the clones for him. They're the ones that built Snoke. At his request, all of that stuff. It also says there that they built the fleet, but I still, with the amount of ships that were there, I don't think that, even with, what is it, Tim? We did the math. It was like 20 years? No, it was 10. 20? 20, 30.
I don't know, Kevin. Let's just call it 50 and call it a day.
From A New Hope to Rise of Skywalker.
From A New Hope to Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
It's about 20 years. It's about 20 years.
20 years. So for 20 years, apparently, they've been building these ships, because that's apparently when he came in contact with them. That doesn't make sense, though. Like I don't like that. I think that's an easy out. I don't think it makes sense in the amount of ships they could build in that time to fight.
They built an armada. There's no
exactly.
way. And they were.
Every one of them has a planet-killing weapon on it, so it's not as though it's like, hey, I got my backyard tools here. If the rebellion did it, we can do it too. Like,
yeah, the amount of Kevin and I were talking about this last week. The amount of resources that they would need to build a fleet of that size, they would have had to have harvested an incredible amount of planets to get that amount of weaponry and the amount of kyber crystals that they would need to power the weapons. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, people would have noticed these planets just disappearing because they were building these fleets. So I think Exegol is most definitely, to your point, it could be the remnants of the Starforge, or it is the Starforge. just under a new name.
It
doesn't make sense.
I like your theory, Bife, about it being like some cataclysmic event that happened in conjunction with the Starforged on Exegol that created whatever it is that we see in Rise of Skywalker. I like that the best.
Yeah, that's my new favorite one. I like
That's
that
my
one
favorite.
a lot.
Dave, Dave, if you're watching.
I think it's better than, the idea of like, oh, well, they had Exegol, but did you see the Kuat Drive Yards replica that they had behind that?
Yes.
Man, that's stuff great. Like, no one is hiding a giant fleet building facility that spans an entire planet like this, And it's not as though they've got, I don't know.
And look at the technology
There
they
are so
had
many
on Exegol. Like, if you look at the cloning technology they had there, it looked very archaic. It had a very, like, industrial steampunky kind of vibe. It looked like it was just kind of just ghetto rigged together. And, like, this is what we have, but we can also build all of this stuff for you, these Star Destroyers and TIE Fighters if you wanted, but we'll make you these botched clones. It just doesn't sound right. It just sounds weird. It
looks like something you'd find on the Undercity level of Coruscant, but at the same time,
like 1313 level tech. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, totally.
And what's interesting too is someone said in chat, could there have been a second Starforged? Technically, Disney hasn't explained the first one, so this is a perfect opportunity to take advantage and loop all your storytelling around. We're firm believers here on this show that the Old Republic will remain the Old Republic for the most part. Characters will be similar, storylines will be similar, not exact, but similar. And things like the Starforge will still exist. So,
not to mention, like, for the most part, they've got a really blank slate with the Rakatan Infinite Empire.
Very much so.
Like, there's story and there's lore to it, and they've got a history and everything, but it's not as though they've explained everything.
The only thing they've added in is did you play what was the Jedi Fallen Order?
Yes, I did.
So you know the Zepho. They added in the Zepho. That's the only ancient civilization we know of.
They did not explain the Zepho well enough.
No, not at all.
So much more
totally
that
agree.
they can do with this like these aliens that are 20 feet tall that we don't really know what they can do. I'm excited to learn more about them. But speaking of Rise of Skywalker, Kevin, I sent you a YouTube video.
Yep.
Of the ending of when Rey kills the Emperor.
Did you send it to Bife?
Oh, I did not send it to Bife.
Send it to Bife so you can watch it on the.
Okay, so I don't know if you can show this on if you're gonna show it on.
I can't. I don't have the screen capacity today.
Sure, that's fine.
But so explain it because it's really easy to explain. And Tim.
Yeah. So it's almost like this gave me goosebumps when I watched it. So chat, go back in the time machine, watching Rise of Skywalker. Rey versus the Emperor. Emperor says, "I am the Sith," and starts shooting lightning at her. And she says, "And I am all of the Jedi." And she's got her lightsaber, and she pulls out the other one, and she force reflects back the lightning. But what was really cool is they use the Force Ghost. They use Yoda, Obi-Wan, Anakin in the background, and Luke. Yeah. And so it's the four major Force Ghosts in the background. Like when she says, "And I am the Jedi," it's them in the background helping her defeat the Emperor. And it's just like that a little touch that they added to that was just so compelling.
And this is in the movie?
No, it's a fan version.
It was just an edit. It was a fan-made edit. But it was so well done, and it was just like this little thing that they could have added to the end of the movie. That just really, I feel like it really resonated with me because they always like showed Force Ghosts throughout the movies, and like this was like that was a big point where they could have gotten all of the big actors, the most important Jedis in the background to help Rey defeat this shell of evil, like this thing that it's not even the Emperor anymore. It's all of the bad in the universe. And
so I'm watching this now muted, and I feel the goosebumps.
Yeah, right, goosebumps, man. Right. It's just here, I'll put it in chat.
I did.
So you guys can see it.
Drop it in Facebook. I put it in Twitch. Drop it in Facebook.
That's fantastic, dude. Oh my god.
But yeah, no, just a little thing that was just perfect.
I even ask because it's one of these things of like, because of the lighting in that particular scene, I feel like it's one of those things that it could have been there and I would have missed it. You
Yeah,
know?
no,
Like,
exactly. That's when I looked at it. I was like, "Oh, was this actually in the movie?" Because I was covered in beer half of the time. I might not have remembered. I'm never gonna let him. I'm never gonna let that down.
That's all right.
In case you didn't know, so the Rare Drive guys went and saw. We saw Rise of Skywalker together, and Corey got this massive beer, and he then spilt it all over me. So for 2 hours, I was covered in High
damn, dude.
Cold.
That's rough.
wet and sad.
Tim, I spilled
Sat
beer.
there.
I spilled beer on Byf the first time I met him.
Yeah,
No way.
yeah. No,
Was
this
it
is
also
way
at a
back
Star
when.
Wars movie?
No, it was.
It was at a.
Was that the
fondue place?
The fondue
Yeah, the
place Corey likes. I forgot what it's called, but yeah, I spilled him on
The melting pot?
Yeah, that
It was-
one.
Yeah, it was like on. Was it me and Triple Red?
You and Sam.
That's funny.
There we go.
Yeah, you and Sam. That was the night or 2 nights before SweatCon. That was the day I met Byf. And Ben
Nice.
and Sam and Ari and everybody. But yeah, I really like the video. I think that would have been a way more compelling way. And even if
Yeah.
you did like silhouettes of the animated characters in the background, you know, Kaden and Luminara and all them, I think, you know, as long as they were behind the major Jedi that we know, and if you're gonna do that based on the way you took the lore, you'd have to throw Leia in there, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you would.
Yep. So
Which I don't like. But
why don't you
whatever.
like?
I don't like Leia being a Jedi.
It doesn't bother
It's
me.
just not my thing. I don't know. It's just like just Leia as a princess. Like Leia, like just I never saw Leia as like a force wielder. Like yeah, she was force sensitive, but for me, I just never really imagined Leia as a Jedi Knight. You know, it's just like I always saw her as the politician, the freedom fighter. Like I felt like she has a very distinct role in the Star Wars universe, but I don't see her as a Jedi. And that's why I never liked her being like Rey's teacher, like mentor. Yeah, it just didn't feel right to me. I don't know why. I'm not sure why they just never. It just like Luke was like, for me, Luke was the Jedi Knight. You know, like Luke was like everything that the Jedi were, as like growing up, and Leia was like his force sensitive sister that kind of like she knew what was going on, but she just like she continued doing her thing, you know, and Luke went off and did his.
But even I
thought that was kind of weird.
As Coach put it, she was a Jedi in Legends too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know she was, but it's just like, but okay, that was Legends, you know, and just like for me, I just always, even like in the books, like even like if you go through like Aftermath, like Leia's off doing political things. She's rebuilding the Republic. Like she's doing that. How does she have time to then also train as a Jedi and while she's also, you know, rebuilding this government? So I don't know. Just never really sat well with me.
Is she a Jedi? Yeah, she is the last Jedi. I think that was the point of that title.
So she was supposed to be the last Jedi. Unfortunately, Carrie Fisher did pass away, so they were never actually able to
fulfill that promise.
Like fulfill that role. And there are like, if you go back and you watch Rise of Skywalker, they do show Luke and Leia CGI together to make them look really young. And they are going through her last trial, and like, you know, she's doing her training and etc. It felt forced, you know. It's like it felt like they wanted that to be like they made it happen. It wasn't something that just like naturally progressed, you know, through the story. No, just wasn't my thing. I'm not gonna fight it. I just never really enjoyed that story arc.
I'm so uncomfortable with how much Tim hates that story arc.
I just don't. It's just not for me. I like Leia being the politician. I think she's a great freedom fighter. I think she's a really cool character. I just never saw her as a Jedi Knight.
I can agree to the extent that she was a good foil for Han and Luke in the original trilogy, because it's one of these things of like, you know, they're always mucking about on the ground, but Leia's the big picture thinker when it comes to that.
Right.
So I can understand how that fits into the politics side of things, but I mean, you know, by that same token, as much as she's a foil for both of them, she is also a bit of a bridge between Han and Luke, you know? If I'm remembering this correctly, is this theory or is this canon, the idea that whenever Han Solo says, I've got a bad feeling about this is a sign of him being slightly force sensitive?
I think it's theory.
Okay.
I think that's theory. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's sort of like, for me, she acts as the bridge between those two characters in the sense of like, you know, she does go part general and part freedom fighter, but she is also very much linked to the Force. You know, so for me,
she's Skywalker, of course, she's like,
exactly,
she's a, she has that blood in her, but it just, I mean, like there was parts where it's like, I feel like because she was, again, going to the whole like she's too old thing, like she didn't even really start to like recognize that she could even like sense the Force until like the very end of Return of the Jedi, where it just like she had that bond with Luke, like Luke had the bond with Vader, you know, with Anakin. Like they could feel each other because they were so connected via family. Like they're family, you know, like that's just that bond that no one can break. But that, I don't think that makes her, I never really felt like they gave her the ability to then also be a Force wielder. You know, like I feel like there's a huge difference between someone who's Force sensitive and someone who can actually be like in tune with the Force.
Yeah, because the Force moves through all living things, so that means that technically Han's luck, as someone said in chat,
brings the world together.
Exactly. Yes. Technically, Han's luck could be considered a sense of Force.
It could be a part of the living Force. Sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm down with that. Plus the dice and that whole thing. I don't know. That was maybe some sort of link untold to us.
I also like the idea that that's partly a thing because it's. Do you guys remember Atten from KOTOR 2?
Of course, Atten Rand.
Yeah, exactly. He also does the whole thing of like, I've got a bad feeling about this. And in game, they explain that as a ability called premonition, which is supposed to be like a Force sensitivity thing, which basically it gives him a quote unquote bad feeling whenever you're about to like face a really powerful encounter. And so, you know, it's one of those moments where it could be a nod to that kind of idea, but it's also something where it's, you know, that's a very old game and it's very much before we had Disney canon. So yeah, it's really hard to say something like that is canon anymore. It's just one of those things of like, how do they want to treat that in the writing?
Before we move on, Byf, I have to know what you're drinking on Star Wars and Scotch.
Not Scotch, actually.
That's
which I know is going to be a great shame to some people, but no, I've got myself a nice Moscow Mule instead, with the copper cup and all. And it was explained to Kevin and Tim before the show started that I have 2 tiers of whiskey, which is excellent whiskeys and bourbons, or just the trash that you drink if you were in a really bad club and you were just trying to forget that things existed. And I figured that for something like this, I would have neither, because it is not, you know, it's not something they break out the best Scotch in the world for, like the birth of a child or someone getting married or just anything that requires someone saying Mazel Tov. But by that same token, it's a special night. So I will go for a respectable Moscow Mule instead. But yeah.
So before we have a little fun with Byf, I want to ask one question, because as your profession is making lore videos based on Destiny, you've worked with Warframe and some other games. Obviously, like we said at the top of the show, the space magic element is there, and I think for all of us that are interested in Destiny and all these games, it's born from a love of Star Wars. As far as looking at Destiny objectively from a lore standpoint, and looking at Star Wars, do you see similarities? Do you see inspiration? Do you see things that you're like, oh my gosh, that's such a nod to Star Wars? I'm very curious, as someone that knows the intimacy and intricacy of Destiny's lore. Is there a correlation? Is there similarities? Is there? I don't want to say like they're copying it, but they're definitely nods, because I know for a fact people that work on Destiny are Star Wars fans.
So it's one of these things of, I'd say there's kind of correlation, but correlation is not necessarily something that comes from causation. You know, there's a lot of similar themes to even, you know, groups of Guardians in the way that they form versus Jedi in the way that they form. So, for example, in the Dark Age of Destiny, you have the Iron Lords, who are this knightly order of light bearers that came together in order to fight for justice. And similarly, if you take just the base Star Wars trilogy, and you listen to Obi-Wan talking about the Old Republic and the Knights of the Jedi Order, who were a group of Force users that fought for justice in the Republic, you know, it's not too dissimilar. You know, there's always going to be nods to that. And then there's going to be the sort of the bigger implications and little moments where it's, you know, they're sort of doing it, but they're not really. So it's going to be moments like, for example, Radagast literally having a blade, and references and little nods here and there. I don't know. It's small things that I think allow the two to become comparable and similar, but it's not anything where I'd say it's directly. I mean, it's never going to be a quote unquote direct copy, but yeah, like the inspiration is very clearly there. But that's kind of the fascinating thing about Destiny is if you're saying that Destiny has drawn inspiration from one thing, it's kind of drawn inspiration from a lot. And I think Star Wars is good for doing this too. Like both franchises, they take a lot of ancient cultures, or they will take a lot of inspiration from people and places and just a variety of sources of inspiration. And they'll merge it into what seems like a really alien world, but it's all strangely enough just come from corners of our own world that we don't know as well, you know? So, I mean, even little things like, say, starting out in the desert world of Tatooine, you know, it feels alien to us because of the two sunrises and because it's so strange compared to suburbia, almost. But, you know, like, that's very much something that we film here on Earth in the actual movie context of things. I don't know, like, it's really, it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but yes, there is some correlation between the two, but I'd say that the inspirations for both are really wide, and yeah, as a result, they're really rich universes.
And you said, and not to jump too far off track, but you said, you know, you grew up too as a Star Trek fan. Is there intertwining with that as well in Destiny that you see?
I know that Christine Thompson wrote some stuff for Star Trek Online before she came and wrote stuff for Destiny. She's now moved on from Bungie, but I'd say there's definitely at least a few influences here and there. Again, I think it's much harder with Star Trek because Star Trek is all about its... I think it's going to be a bit of an odd one to sort of say, but Star Trek is very much about the vernacular. You know, when you're sitting there and it's like, beam me up, Scotty, that's only part of like a much bigger sense of, hey, what's a phaser? Hey, what are these engines doing? And in Star Trek, it's very much about like the micro kind of description of what every part of a ship is doing, or what every part of a weapon is doing, or what every system of something is working towards, and everything is codified. Destiny is a lot more freeform, you know, like you have much less description of stuff and much less sort of organization. It feels a little bit more ramshackle, and it's much more about bigger concepts than that. So I'd say there's definitely like something where they will pull them together at certain points, but I wouldn't say that they are at all similar in terms of feel, if you get what I mean. Like Star Trek is granular, Destiny is much more about the macro. So yeah.
I love both of those answers so much. Good explanation. I always tell people when I look at, you know, lore, you know, and people are, because I'm a huge lore guy. Like whenever I play a game, like I want to be immersed. I want to understand what I'm doing. I want to know who my character is. I want to know why they exist. I want to know what their choices are. You name it. That's just how I roll.
Yeah.
And with Destiny, it was always reading text and going through and looking at things and trying to understand it better through videos like yours and all the great people that create lore videos in the community. And it's difficult always for me to look beyond things like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings because everything's so fleshed out. Even if I don't like what Disney's doing, I can go back and look at Legends and enjoy a book or a comic there. And Lord of the Rings, you know, the Silmarillion is you need to bring a pack of highlighters if you're going to read the Silmarillion because you got to just to keep track. So Destiny to me was always like, oh, well, you know, maybe they'll get their lore along the way. But you forget, you know, I'm dealing with 60-something years of history for Lord of the Rings. I think more at this point. And 40 for Star Wars. So it's just interesting in the comparisons. And I always like to see what people think when they compare, you know, legendary lore-based systems to newer ones. So just wanted to give you 2 cents on that.
I'll say this too. I do wish that Destiny and the Bungie guys would expand a lot more on this, you know, like even down to the really small granular things. Like, for example, we know that Dead Orbit has a fleet. And we know that that's probably ramshackled together from a whole bunch of things. But we also know that alongside all of that, with the forces defending the city, is an organization that's literally called the FOTC, which is Forces of the City. In Star Wars, if you're looking at, say, the fighter that the Rebel Alliance uses, you get the fact that it's made by Incom, you know, it's an X-Wing, and you get all of the different, like, granular details about an X-Wing, you know? You get sort of an idea idea of why it's produced, what it's being made for, why it's different from other fighters, why there are all these special things about it. In Destiny, it's a lot more sort of vague and nondescript, which I wish they would change, at least for those smaller granular details, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm using a fighter and it's very clearly based on a City Hawk model, tell me the small variations that change it from standard City Hawks, but also give me all the shit about, like, all the standard stuff, you know? Like, tell me what I'm expecting as a baseline, you know? Like, what makes Luke's X-Wing different from a different, just like a standard-ass X-Wing? What makes Poe Dameron's modified one different from the ones that the Resistance has? You know, like, give me all those granular details. That's what I really, really want.
Do
if you're
you
gonna hit me with it.
do you think that is a symptom of the fan base, something that the writers can't flesh out in a game, or something that will come in the future?
I think it's a bit of a stylistic choice, but also I think it's a bit of a thing to do with the limitations of having a writing team that is not the size of like a Hollywood movie studio's writing team, that is basically trying to cover interesting stories and the important points of the universe, right?
And do it in a game, because, you know,
Yeah,
it's
right.
something like Star Wars. It's like, we could put it in the book, we could put it in the comic, we could put it in the movie, we could put, you know,
Destiny is a narrower franchise than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, you can have a Star Wars encyclopedia where you can go over every tiny, minute little detail on each individual object or place, or like a scene in a battle or whatever. But Destiny doesn't have that. So, you know, for them, it's very important to say, like, instead of just saying, like, hey, let's tell the stories of Luke and Darth Vader and Han Solo, and let's go through that epic narrative arc, but also let's go and do the, you know, stuff about, say, what the standard blaster or stormtrooper will use. Destiny is just about their metaphorical Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader. You know,
Yep.
it's going to be, this was Dredgen Yor, and this was his thorn. This is, you know, Shin Malfa, and this is the last word. It's going to be, hit the important tonal notes, make sure the characters are developed, make sure the writing on those core points is good. The peripheral stuff is not important in the grand scheme of things. And I completely understand that. I pray for a day when it's not the case, because I'll have just better capacity when it comes to writing, but they've got their priorities in the right place for the moment. It's just one of those, like, you know, I dream one day of a universe that's that big.
Yeah,
That's all.
because the allure of Star Wars is the universe.
Yes.
Even the garbage shit movies, we still watch them because they're part of the story within the universe that the three of us and everyone sitting in this chat loves so much. Whether you get mad
Exactly.
and you want to
You're
choke
not
Mickey
wrong.
Mouse for all Mickey Mouse has done to you with Star Wars, you're still here hanging out, telling me
Don't
how
touch-
much you
don't
want to
touch
choke
the
Mickey
mouse.
Mouse. I
And
love the
even
mouse.
with- Yeah, and for every, you know, Attack of the Clones, there's 7 seasons of Clone Wars, you know? And for every moment where, like, there may be a bad story that's going on, there's, like, half a dozen really good ones, you know? Like, there's going to be ups and downs in the space of a universe, generally. You know? There's always going to be peaks and troughs.
What was your feeling on the conclusion of Clone Wars? Tim and I went into detail on every episode of that season.
So I thought the last 4 episodes were fantastic, and I love the way that they time everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that it's going through almost, well, not exactly hour by hour, but almost hour by hour, the moments leading up to Order 66 feels so good.
Yeah.
You know, you're completely in tune with why Maul is telling you that, you know, the Republic has already fallen and that the Sith have already won. You can completely understand why that sounds crazy from the perspective of the Jedi, and why Ahsoka's like, no, what are you talking about? That's nuts. Or, well, wait, tell me about this Sidious guy that you keep on going on about. Yeah, like, everything they've done with those episodes is fantastic. The only thing I really could have asked for is maybe an expansion on how Wolf and, oh god, who's the other clone who's with Wolf and Rex in Rebels?
Yes, I agree. You want to know how they got there on
How they got their chips out specifically. But even then, that's like, you know, micro detail. Rex was realistically the most important one to cover, you know?
Yeah, I think I would assume that, like, Rex figured it out from Ahsoka, how she was able to find it, essentially, and then he kind of just went with that and took out the chips from other clones that he could find.
Yeah.
Most likely, I think that's one of those things with where in Star Wars you kind of just have to run with it, your own imagination, and then whatever you think of, then there it is.
You do not need to know this story.
Yeah, exactly.
We talked last week too about someone came up with an insane theory about how alternate timelines can be created within the Disneyverse.
Oh my gosh! I swear, if I see one more Disney reboot of, they're gonna get rid of the new trilogy and they're gonna reboot it, I'm gonna just jump out a window.
That part of it's dumb. The way they get it done, though, we talked about how in Rebels in the last season when Ezra goes into the Hall of Mirrors, within the Veil of the Force, and Palpatine's in there and Ahsoka's in there and all that stuff. Tim and I were saying like that's the cool part because that could lead to literature and comics and Disney Plus shows and things like that completely go off the rails and do other stuff. The people that think it's going to replace the trilogy is just God, just sorry and stop. Do you think in the future, as we go into things like Mandalorian, it's dripping with rumors that Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka are in the new season of Mandalorian? Do you think as we go into the future and we add new animated live action and things like that, where do we go next? Do we stay in the current era? Do we foster this new High Republic? Or do we finally get what the fan base really, 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 really wants and will shut a lot of people up and get our Old Republic on a screen somewhere that isn't a video game with a controller that's 20 years old?
I think it's not about one, but it's about all of them. It's admittedly going to be irritating because one of them, of course, has to come before the others. But there's good. Mandalorian proves that no matter where you sit in the Star Wars timeline, even after the quote-unquote big events of that particular era have unfolded, like the second Death Star's destroyed, the Empire's fallen apart, there are still good stories to be told in the universe, no matter where you are in the timeline. So it's one of these moments for me where I sit there and I think, okay, it's not about where, it's about what, It's very much about what they make and can they make it good quality. Because let me tell you, even though that era of Star Wars for me feels a bit dead between, say, 6 and 7, and admittedly, there's a lot still going on. The minute that I see the Darksaber coming out of the guy's TIE fighter in the last episode, holy shit! Oh, it's gonna be so good.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's the shit that I'm excited for, man. Like, when you sit there and tell me that we could be getting a Darth Revan TV show, I'm like, okay, cool. We get to hear about the Mandalorian War, and we get to hear about all of these crazy events, and we maybe get to see the cataclysmic moments, like how the war ended in Malachor 5. And, there's questions for me about like how they take that and then they also combine it with what we've seen of Malachor 5 in Rebels, and they get to merge these storylines in a brilliant little way. I'm so excited, dude.
Yeah, that's
again,
what...
It's not about the where, it's about the what. That's what it is for me. I think as long as it's well written, it's good.
That's what Star Wars is really good at, is taking something from later in the timeline or earlier in the timeline and looping it around and connecting dots, which is why the Exegol Starforge theory is so much fun to speculate about, because it could happen. Because they love to take something that we already know and show it to us at a different time period in Star Wars and be like, this is what it used to be. This is what it is in the future. Remember this? And that's why it's so special. So yeah, seeing the events of Malachor 5, which I doubt they would do to the T of what we know, but even something similar would be just wild, and bringing in characters like, what's her name? Your Coder 2 character, Mitra Surik?
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to remember.
Mitra Surik, yes.
Yeah, Mitra Surik. And, stuff like that. Man, it may not make it to a movie screen, or a Disney Plus show, but I'd read that book. And
I'd gloss over so many different things just so I could get to a chapter where I hear about the mass shadow generator being flipped on and just watching chaos unfold.
Yes.
Good God. There are so many good potential stories in that.
Yeah, Starkiller Base is Ilum. That was confirmed in Jedi Fallen Order.
Yes, that is confirmed.
Yeah, yep. And that's because they needed a planet that was rich in kyber crystals, and what better place than where the Jedi get their kyber crystals from?
The entire place is a massive kyber crystal. So,
let me ask some questions here on And we're gonna talk more. I see some stuff about Gallery. We're gonna bring back Gallery next week with just me and Tim, so we can do it.
Oh, the ending of Gallery is so good.
Yes, it is. Byf, though, someone had a question specifically for you. Did you watch Star Wars Gallery on Disney Plus?
No, actually, that was the one that was connected to the Mandalorian.
That was the one about how they made the Mandalorian.
No, I've not watched it yet. No.
So your homework is to go and watch it. This other question we have, again, if you have questions, you can use the question command on Twitch, or you can check in the information on Facebook in the pinned comment. This one's from Jekko. It says, Byf, where do you think Disney should take the next main story of Star Wars, whether it be to the future or past or something else entirely?
I think that if you're looking for a good story, the entire thing has to follow. I say has to follow. I think it will be best if it follows a arc that's kind of similar to what we had in the original trilogy. You know, so that sort of New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi philosophy, where it's, you know, great victory, sort of defeat, and then, you know, fantastic ending with just all of that room. For me, that says Old Republic all over it, you know? Like, even when we have the initial fights where Revan joins the Republic forces in the Mandalorian War, there is room to craft that New Hope story. And there's also room then to introduce the threats that come with that. And so I kill for that personally. But I think it would also be a really great time to sort of explore the earlier times of the Jedi. You know, like, there are moments that are so untouched, which could potentially add really cool dimensions, like the Great Hyperspace War, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, that's a really early period of Star Wars, but it is, I think, ripe with opportunities to tell fantastic stories, particularly about the more ancient Jedi and Sith. You know, that's, yeah. I'm very much in that older period of Star Wars as far as I'm concerned.
I want the Jedi Mandalorian Wars more than anything.
Same. Very much so, same.
That is the, like, Canderous Ordo talk when you meet him in 1 and he's sitting there on his ship telling, if you keep going back to Canderous, he will keep telling you stories about the war, and it's one of the best parts of the game because you could just keep getting him to tell you stories over and over again. And
he freaking tells you about the Yuzong Vong.
Yep.
He, like, dude, when that happened, at first I had no clue what was going on. The moment that I started reading up about everything in Legends about the Yuzong Vong, and then I read back, and that was like, dude, oh, such a sick tie-in.
Yeah,
which is why, like, it's a side thing, but canonizing Canderous is really, really cool for the sake of, like, all of those stories that he digs into.
And I don't think that Disney, like, people assume that Disney's going to rewrite the whole past. I don't think they're going to do that because, you know, Darth Bane was made canon by Clone Wars in literally a scene that lasts 30 seconds, but it's very impactful. Yes. Do we know anything about his Disney lore? No. Will he be the guy that creates the rule of 2? Most likely. Mm-hmm. I don't see a reason why they would strip, you know, the legendary Darth Bane of that feat that he completed. So,
not to mention, like, his writing already is phenomenal. If I'm okay, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong because it's been a while since I dove into it. But Bane was also a legendary saber fighter.
Yes.
Isn't he the one that basically challenged a bunch of people and said, "Go out into the storm and emerge dry"? And he goes out in the storm with his saber and hits every drop of rain before it hits him and comes out completely dry, and everyone else is soaked.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Like, that's so cool. Like, how could you not take that story? Right? Like, it's ripe with potential, dude. And
people got to remember too, like, they're going to be telling these stories while we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And we're going to be old nerds like, this is amazing. We finally got to see the Bane story complete. Thank you, Disney Plus Plus.
Retirement home. And Kevin, do you want to go to the cinema?
Why, yes, Tim. We could just watch it on Disney Plus Plus, though. It's funny thing too when you mentioned, like, where they should go, and you were talking about Mandalorian. One of our favorite scenes from the Mandalorian was Din Djarin's flashback of his childhood when he was rescued by what are they called?
I'm not even gonna answer for you. You have to do this on your own.
It's driving me. I know it's death, and
Come on, Kevin, you're close. Come on, starts with an S.
I want to say squad, and that's not it. Death.
Come on, you go.
I'm typing.
Kevin.
Death Watch.
Everyone's saying it in chat now.
Kevin.
Ah, there we go.
You said it started with an S. You lying, conniving. You threw me more off the path. Anyway, when he gets saved by Death Watch, but we also get to see the droids.
You get to see a super battle droid and
Right,
everything.
from the
background. That gives you all you need to know.
Yep. So
Perfect.
it's just little stuff like that I think we'll always appreciate as fans, no matter what happens. Oh, someone's.
I wanted to go more into that. I want to know what he did. What does he do with Death Watch? Do they teach him how to be a Mandalorian? I want to know.
I believe they said there is more backstory coming this season. I believe I read that somewhere.
They're definitely gonna have to do some deep stuff in this next coming. Like they've built the characters. They've done a good job of like establishing the child. There's more than just Yoda. Like all of this stuff. Time to start filling up the unknown areas with more story.
All right, I have to ask Byf another question because before we have a little fun with him, Byf, what is your favorite Star Wars movie and why?
Ooh.
Oh. Okay. Without. Okay, are we talking original, like mainstream 9, or are we talking everything in between?
If it was in theaters.
If it was in theaters, it counts. Okay. Without question, Rogue One. And
yes.
I think my reasons for saying that is because Rogue One captures not necessarily, a fantastic story of the Jedi and all that, but it captures what I think the core of Star Wars is, which for me, it boils down to both bigger picture things like the struggle between good and evil and seeing, a fight victorious against impossible odds, but also the much more simple things like, we got to have a really cool fucking space battle, right? And we're going to see a Hammerhead Corvette smash one Star Destroyer into another Star Destroyer and create possibly the coolest scene I've ever fucking seen in Star Wars. And it's, it's these little things like how Tarkin and Krennic are having their little kind of like political infighting where Krennic is very much on the back foot and is always going to lose. And he's sort of going to fight against that anyway because that's the way the Empire is sort of set up. And then, even when it comes down to Vader's final scene, it's one of these moments of saying, like, yeah, we have all of these fights between smugglers and the military of the Empire and the Rebel Alliance and, pirates back and forth all over the place and just people trying to make their way in the world. But there is a bigger threat here. There is a higher power in the form of the Jedi and the Sith. And it is still, to this day, I think, one of the most fantastic scenes in the entirety of Star Wars is the moment in the corridor when it's completely dark and then a single red saber and shit's going down.
Good,
we were screaming in the theater by
yeah, it's so good.
And the actors in that scene the actors in that scene did such a good job of portraying the terror that they were.
Fucking terror.
Yeah.
Like not only do you see this dark figure with a saber, but then imagine you're retreating towards the door and your buddy is force lifted into the ceiling and then slammed down, and you're like, what the? What is?
I don't think we've ever seen that level of intensity when it came to any type of force wielder against non-force wielders. Like him just cutting through these people was just something that was so intense.
Like, that's the shit I would do in KOTOR, right?
Yeah.
That's the shit you'd see in Force Unleashed,
yeah.
but in a movie. And it's like, holy fuck, we're actually seeing this shit now, right?
We get teased by it when he goes to the in Attack of the Clones when he goes to the Sand People village, and his mother dies. So like, there's a moment where we see it, we're like, oh god, he's gonna go ham on them.
Yeah.
But we don't actually see it, so it's almost like this precursor to what we see in Rogue One. Of his temper, and then
I see everybody talking about SWTOR cinematics and Maul in Clone Wars and all these other things. Like, yes, absolutely, but this was the point it was seen in a movie, like in a live action piece of cinema, and it's one of these, like, it's very much in that same vein. Like, yeah, absolutely, but it's the power of seeing that on real people's faces that makes it so effective. We all
want to see a cinematic and I don't mean cinematic like we've seen, I mean a live action cinematic version of the sacking of the Jedi Temple by Darth Maul and his legions of Sith. Because that is the greatest cinematic, in my opinion, is when that ship crashes through the front gate of the Jedi Temple and it slides and it's just darkness and Darth Maul's just standing there and then 20 red lightsabers appear in the darkness behind him and you're like, oh, and then they cut it and it's just green, blue, yellow, fighting red and purple all over the place. It is by far the coolest.
Yeah.
That's what we want, Kathleen. That's what we want.
She's not going to deliver it.
Also, it's not. We're talking about SWOTOR, that cutscene, right?
SWOTOR cutscene, yeah. One of the original launch ones.
I'm trying to remember what the Sith Lord's name is.
Did I say Darth Maul? Darth Malgus.
You did say Darth Maul.
Darth Malgus.
So it's like, when did
Malgus,
this happen?
there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, Darth Malgus is what I meant.
Yeah. And
No,
even fucking like, even the cutscene where it's like the Sith returning to Korriban, just overwhelming the space station. Little shit like that is a perfect kind of teaser for that intensity. You know, like I really do want to see that. There's something about it that is, 100%.
Doesn't the one Sith kill the other Sith too at the end of it?
Yeah, Malgus kills his master, if I'm remembering.
Is that what? Yeah. You're right, because that's before because his face doesn't get messed up till he fights. What's his name's dad in the other cinematic, the one on Alderaan. When he takes the grenade to the face. No, Darth Malik is Kotor. Darth Malik was with Revan. Darth Malgus was SWOTOR era. And he's back in the game, by the way, if anyone wants to play it.
It's another point at which you can sit there and say, again, this is more reasons why we should have Old Republic stuff, because this is not necessarily the Clone Wars where it's the Jedi as a singular front and a singular force. Like Old Republic era, you very much could have had more than just the two Sith. Like there was a Sith Order, and if you wanted to portray like a full-on battle between Force users on both sides, you go to the Old Republic and you talk about all of the shit that we see there.
Yep.
Because during the technically they call it the Jedi Civil War. Right? The original conflict between the Republic and Malik's Sith.
Yep.
Yeah, like that is literally the definition of Dark Force users versus Light Force users in a massive scale. Like, yeah, that's what I think would be best to portray.
And
if you're real.
There's tons of stories before that too of like all the Jedi leaving the Order and going to places in the dark reaches of the universe and finding Sith mysticism, and that's how they join, like Exar Kun and the Keldromo brothers and stuff.
Dude.
before we do the fun part, and then we got to get out of here, I want to ask these two more questions that were sent in for Byf. The first one's, do you think that our entrance to the Luna Pyramid ship could be seen as a throwback nod to the Coder scene you were speaking about at the start of the stream?
Do you mean entering the Leviathan and finding out that you're Darth Revan? If so, I mean, I would say that it's inspired by much bigger things than that, but it's very much it very much changes the pace of the entire franchise, and the same way that entering the Leviathan changed the pace of the game. You know, like I said, that when you hit your fourth planet after the Leviathan, everything changes, because you know it's all the small things like you can't go to Dantooine anymore. It's all the small things like you now have a bunch of companions that previously trusted you intrinsically, and now they're like, yeah, I don't know, man. In the case of like Karth, or you know, you're still sitting there, and maybe if you've gone to the dark side, everyone's like, I don't know about this guy. As long as we're just getting this done and defeating Malik, I guess it doesn't matter. You know, like there's a different feel and a different mood to it. I think that the pyramid on Luna very much elevated the pace of the story for Destiny 2. So when I went to Bungie to play Shadowkeep before it was released, so I could capture some footage, and before any of that was done, you know, I sat there and I had no idea what I was going to face, except I was excited for Hive on the Moon. When I rounded the corner and saw the pyramid in the first story mission, which they let us play,
God, that was so good.
That was goosebumps, dude. Fucking goosebumps.
There were 4 Bungie employees behind me just watching to see what I'd do, and I dropped my controller and I'm just like, oh,
pyramid ship.
Oh, you went there. Oh, oh, okay. Like, you know, it's just way fucking bigger than anything I was expecting. And yeah, Leviathan is very much akin to that. I would definitely not say that the two have any relation to each other or any inspiration from each other, but like it's a similar change in tone of the story. You know, like we thought we were just gonna kick the ass of some like none of that nonsense, right? None of this family tree of Oryx shit. No, pyramids. We're getting to it. Like that was it.
Good stuff. And the last question is, do you think that Guardians could get the Grey Jedi treatment in Beyond Light? That's from Jennifer to you, Byf.
I absolutely think they do, because like there's been a very serious attempt to differentiate the light and dark as forces of power versus the light and dark as points of view of morality, right? So we are still very much going to be using the dark, and we're still very much probably going to be serving the agenda of the city and the people of the city in the light. It's just a case of we are embracing, as some would say, a more complete view of the Force, I think the quote is. I'm trying to remember what it is from
Balanced view?
episode 3. You know, what does Palpatine say to Anakin in his office? You know, it's a more complete view of the Force, something like that. Anyway, yeah. Long story short, the two do not necessarily need to correlate with morality as well as with their power, and as a result, I think that getting the quote-unquote Grey Jedi treatment is exactly where we're going. You know, you don't necessarily need to align with either, you're just aligning with paracausal powers on both sides of the scale. As long as you know what you're fighting for, you know, I think it's fine to use both.
Cool.
Okay, also, just real quick, I just watched the Darth Malgus siege on the Jedi Temple video.
You've never
I've
seen
never
that?
seen that before, and
What?
oh my god,
Tim, here's your homework tonight.
So-
Here's your homework tonight. Before you go to bed, I want you to just...
I'm gonna watch all of the cutscenes.
Yes, go to YouTube, even the new ones.
Remember, yeah, I know, I found it. I remember I saw the Old Republic, the one where you see the two brothers fight.
Oh,
yes.
They,
Watch
they had the two yellow lightsabers and like they go at it.
Yep.
I was at EA Play when they like announced that, where they showed it off, or it was like Cologne or whatever. That was the only one that I had seen. I'd never seen the Siege of Coruscant
watch the old
video,
ones.
and that was really good.
You can watch them as a movie. That someone made them all in chronological order, so you can watch them as a movie. So the characters, what happens to them, takes place. The father in the video with the two brothers, Tim, is the Eternal Emperor I always yell about.
Oh, I didn't
That is
know
his. That is his second life that he has hid from everyone in the universe.
Oh, what?
He has established a whole other empire where justice is the way of the Force, not light or dark. It is justice and only justice, and those are his two sons. And he has a daughter who's batshit insane. Before we let you go, Byf, people wanted you to read some lore, and I couldn't find any better lore for you to read than what I DM'd you on Twitter. So I need you to do it and give it the YouTube treatment, and when you are done, we are going to get the out of here, but the stage is yours, my friend.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? So powerful and so wise. Oh wait, hang on. Oh wow, it just updated my messages and immediately scrolled straight to the bottom and killed my place.
All right, I got to start over again.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. It's a Sith legend. Darth Plagueis was a Dark Lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life. He had such a knowledge of the dark side that he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. He became so powerful, the only thing he was afraid of was losing his power, which eventually, of course, he did. Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed him in his sleep. Ironic. He could save others from death, but not himself.
That's really good.
That's so good. I would have joined
really
the dark
good.
side if Byf did that to me.
The Jedi are evil.
Chad, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Star Wars and Scotch. The gentleman who just read that is Byf. If you have no idea who that is, you should check him out. He's on YouTube. My name is Byf, and My Name is Byf everywhere else, as far as I know, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for
Perfect.
having me so much, guys. This
Dude,
is fantastic.
well, you're gonna
This
have
is
you
super
back
fun.
because I feel like we just scratched the surface and we didn't get into it. So, yeah, we'll have you back. And if we can make it work at GCX, like you're gonna be on the Star Wars panel at GCX.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No questions about it.
We're gonna work on that. He's Tim Darkest429 on Facebook. And everywhere else, I'm Kevin, KMagic101 on Twitch, Kevin X Vision on Twitter, KMagic101 everywhere else. We are Rare Drop. Everywhere. Go find us. And if you want to check out this podcast, it's on YouTube, raredrop.co/YouTube. And it's pretty much everywhere you get your audio podcasts. But we recommend Spotify because, I don't know, I like Spotify. Either way, you have a good one. We're going to go send all the love over to our buddy Big Cheese KIT. Go show him some love. If you show him enough love, he'll like do all sorts of crazy shit with the production value that shames everyone else.
Oh, yeah, dude.
You guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you next Monday. May the Force be with you.
Peace.